So there's this video that I love. It's this little boy.
Have you ever had a dream that
This idea that he has is just so deep inside of him, but he keeps stumbling on the words. He finally gets what he wants to say out, and then he leans back in the chair and he's just like,
but you could do anything?
nailed it. The question he's asking, and the question I want to ask you, is have you ever had a dream that you could do anything?
Ever had a dream you could do anything? Do anything.
I'm Natale, this is Astro Mosaics, and today we're talking about authentic happiness and how figuring out your authentic happiness is related to Nietzsche's doctrine of the eternal recurrence, which is a very Uranian concept. So I'll get to that in a minute, but first, I want you to think back to when you were a child. Think about when you were about the same age as that kid, maybe 6, 7. As a kid, what did you really love to do? Like more than anything? Over and over again as a kid. Kids can do things, say things, ask the same questions over and over and over and never get tired or bored. I remember as a kid watching the same movies over and over and over again. There's this magic to childhood, and it's designed to be limitless, to not have boundaries. And then we grow up. As we grow, the boundaries and domestication start to influence our actions. But the true value of that childhood innocence is in the remembering later on. That's why it's important to look back and ask, what was that kid I used to be like? What was I like? That's a huge part of who you are in a pure, undomesticated form. And we'll come back to that in a minute, but keep it in mind. What do your childhood desires have to do with the 19th century German existentialist philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche? He's famous for his loss of faith, and I think he should be famous for his mustache because, like, whoa, that mustache, dang, wow. Now, how does this guy, Nietzsche, how is he going to point us to the path of happiness? Well, he was a complex person. What we're looking at today is this powerful doctrine of his, one of his doctrines, and it's called the Eternal Recurrence. Now, Nietzsche did not believe that lasting happiness should be easy, and I tend to agree. It takes work to be truly happy, which might sound like oxymoron, but happiness is a pursuit. It's in the making and accomplishing of goals that we find our most lasting contentment. Happiness is contingent upon action. So remember that part, it's important. What is the doctrine of eternal recurrence anyway? Let's explain it really clearly. It's a thought experiment sort of thing, kind of like Einstein did, where you imagine or hypothesize a reality in which everything in your life recurs again and again and again, exactly as you're living now throughout eternity. So think of that movie, if you've seen it, Groundhog's Day.
Groundhog Day!
And he's living that exact same day over and over and over for who the heck knows how long.
Didn't we do this yesterday?
I don't know what you mean.
Don't mess with me, pork chop.
Until he finally understands what he has to do differently in his life in order to reach a state of happiness. Now, this is where eternal recurrence differs, because imagine that first day that Bill Murray lives in Groundhog's Day and all the decisions he made, which, like, if you remember in the movie, they're all really bad decisions. Things don't go well for him at all. But imagine if that was the day he had to live with those same exact choices over and over again.
Do you ever have deja vu, Mrs. Lancaster?
I don't think so, but I could check with the kitchen.
Like, he didn't get to switch it the next day. So if he decided he was going to treat that guy Ned really badly in that one moment, imagine every day for the rest of his eternity, he would treat Ned the same way. Okay, hopefully that makes it clear.
Bing!
To use the doctrine of eternal recurrence, ask yourself, what would I do in this situation if I had to live my life in the exact same way over and over again throughout eternity? It's not an easy question to face, even though it's an important one. Why is it not easy? Because it can bring up fears, major fears, especially fears of failure or fear of something unfamiliar. It's not the same thing as imagining what you would do if you had a year to live. That's different because there are not a lot of lasting consequences if you're not going to be living through this imagined scenario. This is a day on repeat. This is a bit more real because recurring consequences, that's a lot different. This is all going to come together. Okay, so remember, childhood, Nietzsche, Groundhog's Day.
It's still just once a year, isn't it?
Ezra Beta is this Zen teacher I really like, and he explains why it's so important to ask this question of yourself. He says, answering this question of eternal recurrence is not just about making changes in our behavior. It's more about becoming who we truly are. When we take this question seriously, we're forced to look at ourselves with penetrating honesty. We may be also forced to face the fears that hold us back from living from our true heart, because reflection on the question of eternal recurrence will include actions not taken, the choices we avoid. Yeah, that's some real talk. And it brings me back to what you loved as a kid. I loved to roller skate and pretend I was in the Olympics as an ice skater and do the commentary on the side. And I wasn't very good, but I loved it. Now, of course, some of those things may be unrealistic in one way or another, but we're looking at the essence of what it was. So if you're feeling stuck, or if you're on the edge, or you're wondering what you need to do to move forward in your life, ask yourself if you would want to deal with the situation that you're in exactly the same way for eternity. This is where Uranus comes in. Uranus is the archetype of the rebel, the change maker, the one who requires authenticity above all else. And the Uranus cycle in everyone's life, in your life, everybody has it. It's going to bring up this question to you. And if you don't answer truthfully, or you continue to live your life in some unfulfilling way because you have fears, then situations will not resolve, solutions will not come. And honestly, in my experience, things in your life will get much more complicated and it'll get more difficult to untangle later. We get stuck because we've lost touch with this bigger picture of who we are and what we are here to do. This is a really big theme for me. I think about it all the time. It's one of the biggest pursuits I've had in my life, to reach authenticity, to be an authentic person, to be myself and be okay with it and not feel like I have to hide anything, and searching for authentic happiness. And that's an active pursuit. Starting the channel was a risk, and it was the best thing that I've ever done. It really goes back to my childhood, things I loved doing. I loved doing videos, and I loved editing videos when I was a kid too. And sometimes I just think about my life and I'm like, wow, it is so incredible to do the things that you loved doing as a child, as an adult. So that's part of why I'm sharing this with you. The thing about authenticity and choosing authenticity as a part of eternal recurrence is that it leads to a path where you don't have to worry as much. And once you get to that point where you've been vulnerable, everybody knows what your deal is, everybody knows who you are, what your secrets are even, then you have so much more freedom. And that's Uranus. Uranus is freedom. Eternal recurrence is the freedom from the fear of not making that decision that you'd have to live with over and over again. When I tell you to do something like look back at your childhood and aim in that direction again of what you loved, I'm doing that too. It's very vulnerable. Self-expression is one thing, but putting yourself out to the world in an authentic format, you have to have a thicker skin. So that being said, I did release my first book. It's officially out. It's on Amazon. It's called The Runaway Stars, and it's a book of poetry, and I'm really excited about it. I'm trying not to be judgmental on my own self for taking a risk. And the reason I'm really telling you about it is not to get anybody to buy the book. It doesn't matter to me if anybody even reads it. The point is that we have to do these things when we're compelled to do them, because that's what brings authentic happiness into your life. I could have spent my whole entire life talking myself out of publishing a freaking poetry book. I mean, like, who even cares? Who cares? But I do. I care. I care that I did it. And that decision was made based on the concept of eternal recurrence. If I thought about my life over and over and over again, in that same decision of I'm not going to share myself, I'm not going to be authentic, I'm not going to publish a freaking poetry book, no way. That's so raw and vulnerable and tender. Well, that's the rest of my life? That's the decision I'll have to live with for the rest of my life? No, I don't accept that. I'll accept the risks, yes. I'll accept the fear. Okay, fine. I will accept being judged, and maybe I'm terrible at writing poetry, and that's okay. But if whatever I'm doing in the act of pursuing my passion connects with even one person and alters their path in a positive way so they do their thing, well, that's pretty freaking incredible if you ask me. It's the pursuit of the project that's been precious, and it's made me happy, like really happy, like little kid happy. Wasn't expecting to get emotional. I'm gonna ask you a question. Did you ever have a dream that you could do anything?
Do anything.
Well, one way or another, if you really want to, you can. You can make that choice. If you are interested in looking at my book, no pressure whatsoever, but it is in the description below. And I really wish you all the best, and I'll talk to you soon.